And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Welcome to the program with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, loaded up for the next couple of hours. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. We hope to visit with Steve Hamer, former Vol, to talk about Tennessee's play against Auburn, which I got to be honest with you, I thought the Vols would go down there and get handled pretty well by double-digit points. I was impressed by how Tennessee played, but it was all in vain in retrospect, and only 2 Vols showed up. We'll discuss that. Tennessee picks up a new commitment. We'll have a recruiting update for you. 4 downs, 4 prospects you need to be aware of. We're on offthehooksports.com right now. We'll go through them in an audio-visual style here momentarily. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. For those of you curious, I am out here in Arizona and the sun is just coming up and it is dry.
It is dry and it is hot all of the time. So enjoy that, but it's probably a welcome change. It's not as hot as it would be in June or July when I went. That was brutal.
Oh, yeah, it's not brutally hot. My biggest issue, funny enough, is you just have to remind yourself to drink water all the time because everybody's like, oh, dry heat feels better. I'm like, okay, yeah, you don't sweat from the humidity, but the water's just leaving you can feel it leaving your body. And it's like, it's like you just feel so like wrinkly and dry all the time.
All right, go ahead and jump on board now. Hit the like and subscribe button. Let's get your thoughts on the basketball Vols if you would like to share that. Also, a special announcement coming up at the end of the show. Your opportunity, it's a lot simpler than that Patreon page to win great prizes from Off the Hook Sports. If you want to join on our YouTube channel, you will have the opportunity to win a weekly prize, which will be a t-shirt or the Celebrate 98 book. And then at the culmination of this week, we will offer up that John Henderson helmet. So sorry, got into a busy sort of couple of months. You don't want to know all the drama and the details. But speaking of drama, let's turn to college football recruiting, as there's always drama there. And Caleb, Tennessee picked up a transfer from Notre Dame. Now, on the surface, the first thing I would say is, why would somebody from Notre Dame transfer to Tennessee, especially after Notre Dame was just in the national championship game? Well, to answer the question, partly, it's because the young man, Sam Pendleton, had lost his starting job. So this is a situation where Tennessee isn't pulling away a guy that's 100% happy, but pulling away a guy that probably is a little miffed he lost his starting job. But I think we saw with Lance Hurd, who after the ankle injuries and adaptation to this offense, he was not a starter either, technically. Very similar situation. He lost his job at LSU, but he ended up being a solid player. So somebody at Tennessee's program once told me, why are we taking guys that can't play elsewhere? Well, that's a little bit of an oversimplification, Caleb. I think Pendleton's a big pickup. I think Hurd was a significant pickup, obviously. So this is good news for the Vols as they fortify a line that struggled to protect Nico Iamaleava last year.
I think it's a good move. He's a good pickup. I think it's a little more of a desperate move than you do. I think after adding Wendell Moe, who's a guard, I thought in my mind, why would Sam Pendleton transfer to Tennessee? Because let's add some context. You are right, he lost his starting job. But the reason he was never penciled in to be the starter to begin with, if you remember, he was supposed to be on the bench behind Billy Schroth from Notre Dame, and Notre Dame and Schroth missed the first 6 games due to injury. So they put Pendleton in there. He started, he did well. But once Schroth came back, Pendleton was always going to go back to the bench and then start this year for Notre Dame. He was set to move into the starting lineup this year. So he was clearly going to be penciled in as a starter this year at Notre Dame. So in my mind, I'm like, why would you leave a place where you're guaranteed to start as a guard for a team that just won or played for the national title for Tennessee. Dave, the only reason I could think of is money. And that suggests to me that Tennessee opened the checkbook to get this guy to transfer, which if they open the checkbook, they must be a little bit nervous about their interior line situation.
Okay, let's make that a poll question. Are you worried that Tennessee hasn't done enough in the transfer portal? So we'll go over who Tennessee has right now, but I'm going to play the other side. Pendleton very well, who, by the way, looks like a young African-American Drew Carey from the Drew Carey Show. Have you noticed that? He's got the thick glasses and everything and the mustache. It looks like he's as old as me. But here's why I don't adhere to that. When you have injury situations, and I've been around that, what's the old saying, Caleb? You don't lose your job to an injury, right?
Right.
But that's not pragmatic. And there have been a lot of players, Tom Brady, who have performed at a high level, and you expect to keep your starting job. So, Caleb, I think this could be a situation where Pendleton felt like he did enough to keep the starting job, felt miffed that it got took away from him. And also, I know this sounds odd with Notre Dame being in the national championship game, but between the two programs, who do you think is going to be in that position more often in the next 5 years? I felt like Notre Dame got a really fortunate draw, got hot, and at the end of the day was probably one of the bottom half of the teams in the college football playoff. I think Tennessee is every bit in that position.
I'm more than leaning Tennessee, but I will say I have some historical bias. And what I mean recent historical bias, starting with the 90s and on. But I have to add a caveat. The reason I'm leaning Tennessee is I saw Notre Dame going the way of Vanderbilt in about 50 years because of I felt their academic requirements. And I know everybody's going to be like, academic requirements, that's the important thing. Guys, it's unreasonable what Notre Dame asks of its players academically when Ohio State's not asking for that from their players, Michigan's not asking for it, Tennessee's not asking for it. I thought that would hold Notre Dame back. I'm a little bit more willing to say it won't now, though, Dave, because in the era of NIL and the transfer portal, no team is going to be too deep. So Notre Dame can get just enough guys to compete, honestly.
Well, and SC Scout Guy brings up a good point. Notre Dame does not have to play in the SEC, so that's a really good point. Now, David says transfers, newly adds, prospects, throw in a bottle of sour mash named Nico. Everything is fine. 25 or nothing, Nico will be a bust. Then again, maybe in high pool, rock against a hard place. I don't think Nico's going to be a bust, but I do think to have two options that are probably mid-level transfer portals. Mo's guys, I know Mo's a 3-star, Pendleton's a 4, but I'm considering them mid-level. In other words, Hurd was expected to step in and play right away. You hope that one of these guys can step in and play right away. And I like the option of having two guys. I think we both thought Holden Stays would be better than Miles Kitselman. At least I did. I was wrong really early in camp when I saw Kitselman making plays and showing off his athleticism that I didn't think he had. So I like having two good options sometimes as opposed to theoretically one great option, which would be Hurd versus these two guys. You know, Hurd panned out, but we didn't think that would be the case in September and early October.
No, we did not. And that's very fair. But, you know, Hurd, it's a little bit different from Pendleton because Hurd actually did lose his starting job. And he lost it to, my understanding, a generational talent at LSU at left tackle that I think it seems like the entire country would have lost their starting job with that guy, right? No matter where you are, who you played for in any situation. I mean, that was a Travis Henry couldn't start over Jamal Lewis, but would have started for every other team in college football in 1998 and 97. Yep. So, yeah, that's where I felt Lance Hurd was. And he was the Travis Henry of LSU at offensive tackle.
Let's take a look at the class, a transfer portal class that you have to judge somewhat on a curve because Tennessee, as I've reported, wanted to spend money to keep their current players on the roster, their NIL money. And unless they ran a bunch of guys, they were up against a scholarship limit. They're at about 82 or 83 before Pendleton, I'm told. So you would have to run a bunch of guys, which you like those guys, so you don't want to do that. But let's take a look at Tennessee's transfer portal class as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer.
Hey Ted, it's time to save some cash during New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All right, let's take a look, Caleb.
Hey, Ted.
Whoa, we're partying.
Hey, Ted.
Caleb. Let's take a look at Tennessee's 2025 transfer portal class. When you take a look at, again, you have to grade this on a curve. This is not Tennessee trying to completely rebuild its program when they had 8 or 10. I did a little bit of research. I mean, they had 8 or 10 transfer portal guys. I think you feel better than that. Sam Pendleton, 6'4", 310-pound transfer from Notre Dame. I think that's a significant pickup. He's a 4-star. Star Thomas, to me, fills a void. A running back, 6 foot, 210 pounds. You know, they brought in the Lynn T. Dixon or whatever his name is for a couple of weeks. Star Thomas is going to get a look, but don't be surprised if he doesn't pan out. I mean, they just need another running back with the departures of Dylan Sampson. I think Peyton Lewis is going to be really good, but there's no depth there. And I don't want to dismiss Deshaun Bishop, but at his size, I think you have to go in there wondering how long he can be a big-time contributor. He did a great job last year. Amari Jefferson, 6 foot, 210 pounds, transfer from Alabama, a 4-star transfer. I like that pickup. And I'm fine with adding Wendell Moe, 6 foot 2, 340 pounds, because you need some depth at the offensive line position. And I think Moe provides that. And who knows, maybe a starter.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee, and this is what you reported on last week, this doesn't change the narrative and the idea that they're focused more on making sure they maintain their talent and develop chemistry more than anything else. And I think you're seeing that with their transfer portal strategy. But, I mean, Dave, it's a red flag that they've got 2 interior offensive line transfers. Now, I understand on the message board, and this is the big thing, Tennessee lost Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, and they are still fighting to keep Andre Carrick. So you can make the case this is an insurance policy. As has been pointed out. And I understand that. And I hope for their sake that's true. But Dave, wouldn't you think that given that it's almost it's going to be year 5 under Josh Heupel, that they would have multiple interior linemen ready to go and not need transfers, whether or not Andre can go?
Well, I'm not sure that they don't. Let's see what happens with Andre Carrick, and he's petitioning the NCAA for another year. I do like Sham Umarov. I like William Satterfield a lot. I know you were asking about interior offensive linemen, but I like the Larry Johnson guy tackle as well, which could open up the door for a tackle to shift inside. So I'm not sure that it's not there, and I don't think Tennessee's coaches are sure, and that's why they go out and get 2 guys from the transfer portal. But, Caleb, I don't think getting 2 guys from the transfer portal is a sure sign that Tennessee is not happy with its first and half of its second string interior offensive linemen. I just think you want more depth there. And if these guys, the thing I like about Pendleton in particular is he's got 3 years of eligibility left. So you're thinking about more of a long-term commitment than a 1-year fix. So I don't know that they're desperate there, but they're probably a little needy. What program in the country, though, isn't a little needy at one position with the transfer portal?
That's true, but did you think interior line would be the neediest spot for Tennessee? Because I didn't, honestly. I thought they needed to go for.
Well, if you'd have asked me back then, I would have thought that Tennessee would recruit well at the skill positions, quarterback, the defensive side. I thought they would recruit well because of opportunity, because the way Tennessee struggled going back to Heupel's first year in 2021. So I'm not surprised, really. This isn't considered a running football team, even though you and I know it is. So, Caleb, I don't have a major problem with Tennessee scrapping a little bit in the interior of the offensive line. Maybe you do.
Well, I'm mixed on it because there's an entire debate over, the quality of player versus filling a void. I think Sam Pendleton is a very, very good player. Again, you are right about one thing, Dave. He could be bitter that he lost his starting job, because my understanding and everything I've read is they were very happy with how he played as the starter amidst injuries. And so I think he would have a reason to be upset about losing his job just because somebody else came back midway through the season. But, that wouldn't be the first time that's happened. There have been guys, have you not covered teams where a guy's done a good job and plays for somebody injured, but the guy injured, you're still going to start when he comes back at the end of the day?
Absolutely. But the tendency in a locker room is to side with the guy that had the job originally.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Side with the guy who had it. And so, for Sam Pendleton to be upset about that, it's like, okay, was Travis Henry upset when Jamal Lewis came back and got the starting job again in 99?
Yeah, well, those guys were tied to scholarships. They're not tied to now. It's a totally different feel. So now Pendleton, would Travis Henry have left when Jamal Lewis came back if there was the transfer portal? Probably.
Well, Travis Henry would have left after the 97 season as a freshman when he realized Jamal Lewis was going to win that starting job.
Right.
He'd have gone somewhere else immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
He had mouths to feed. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee.
I don't think he did at that time.
I think he did. Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Portions of the program brought to you by Double D Piping. The Vols with a close loss to Auburn. Is that a positive or a negative? Caleb and I see it differently. It'll be a Double D Piping, bringing you some Tennessee basketball coverage in 30 seconds.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, it's hot or cold, and it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Are you hot or cold on the Vols after Tennessee's close loss to Auburn, in which they had a chance to win it late? I'm hot because I think that Tennessee's leadership in Rick Barnes and its defense showed up. I think that Zakai Ziegler showed up. I'm hot on those two Vols. I'm cold on the 3 mega transfers. Darling Stone Dubar might as well not have made the trip. Chaz Lanier missed pretty much everything, and Igor Milichik looked lost. So I'm hot on those two Vols, Barnes and his defensive approach, and Zakai Ziegler. I'm very cold on the remainder of the Vols that I don't know can provide a scoring option at any point this season that is as good as just playing good defense. I think that's where the Vols are right now. It's not February yet. Maybe that changes, Caleb, but who are you hot and cold on?
So I am with you. I'm absolutely hot on Zakai Ziegler. I'm incredibly hot on Zakai Ziegler. I don't care that his efficiency was way down in the game. If you watched it, you could tell the guy gives it all every second. I am extremely cold on 2 people. Igor Milichik and Chaz Lanier. And the reason I'm extremely cold on them is the last play of the game. Everybody's questioning the Zakai Ziegler taking the 3-point shot. I get it. He's 0 of 6 from 3 on the game. He's not a good 3-point shooter, and he's not Tennessee's primary scorer. But you know what, Dave? That's a major indictment on the lack of faith Rick Barnes has in Milichik and Lanier in crunch time.
Amen.
Because, he didn't trust them to take the last shot. And those are the 2 best shooters on this team. Outside of Jordan, and Jordan Gainey too, but I think Gainey was in foul trouble at that point. But either way, as the starters go, Milichik and Lanier, they were supposed to be so complimentary as elite scorers this year. And I'm sorry, I keep seeing it. Every time things get tight, Chaz Lanier, he chokes. I know he hit that 1-3 late in the game against Auburn. Dave, I'm going to be honest. I think that was a fluke more than anything. I don't think that's par for the course for Chaz Lanier. And I'm seeing more and more and more now to know that Lanier and Milichik melt down when it gets tight. So I'm absolutely cold on those. And I know you're not going to agree with me on this, but I'm cold on Rick Barnes. I think Rick Barnes had his team exert way too much effort for a game that I get they could have won, but it's not a big deal if you lose. And they lost anyway, and it wouldn't have affected their net ranking if they didn't exert that effort. You can't be playing Zakai Ziegler 39 minutes every night in the SEC. It's a grind of a league. You're going to have him gassed by the start of the NCAA tournament when you need him the most. And that was a huge mistake.
So our poll question that is on right now, the YouTube page, is brought to you by our friends at City Heating and Air Conditioning. Hot or cold, 50 years in East Tennessee, integrity matters, cityheatandair.com. Is currently the Vols in the transfer portal. Have they done enough, or are you worried? 68% of you are worried. I don't think you should be. 32% are not. So who are you coldest on? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Let's go Barnes. Let's go Chaz. Let's go Igor. And let's go Dubar, as that will be our choices on our YouTube page. We encourage you to like and subscribe. Vote on the poll that will be up there here very shortly. And I'm going to tell you why it should be Dubar. And I think that Caleb has missed the boat a little bit. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. There's your best.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, Caleb, why it's Darling Stone Dubar. And you had to watch the game closely, which I'm sure you did. You had to watch the game closely to catch this. Did you notice at the end of the first half, they wanted to rest some guys? Barnes probably wanted to talk to Chaz and see why his head wasn't in Auburn, but it wasn't. Same thing with Igor. They ran a clear-out play with Darling Stone Dubar. Do you remember that at the end of the half? And they ran a clear-out play where he's supposed to create two. That's your job. You're a scorer. You and Chaz are the guys that are supposed to provide the 2 or 3 when Tennessee absolutely needed it. He dribbled against one guy and then passed it into coverage. He essentially passed up on the ISO. That is a major red flag. And I know he's been through some personal issues, but I got to be honest, I'm much more cold on Chaz or Igor, especially not Rick Barnes, than I am on Darling Stone Dubar. I just think this season might be a lost cause for him. And I hate that for the personal issues, but I have no reason to think that in March, Tennessee can give him the ball and get a surefire 2. That's just not going to happen.
Okay, can I defend Darling Stone Dubar for a second?
Yep, absolutely.
How is he supposed – I get it. You want him to ISO. But it's a little rich of Rick Barnes to let me clear out and have Darling Stone Dubar be my scoring guy. And that's the only minute he plays in the whole game. And he had 7 minutes a game the previous 2. This is my issue with Rick Barnes. He has insisted that it's not for lack of effort. He says Darling Stone Dubar is bringing it in practice, but he hasn't picked up the defensive schemes. So what? Let this guy – how can I expect this guy to be a reliable scorer off the bench or even as a role player for Tennessee when Rick Barnes is not giving him even 10 minutes a game? I mean, you got to somewhat get in rhythm. That's like just out of the blue, let me bring in a new quarterback midway through the game just to like switch things up for a minute, but he hasn't worked with the first team all week. And I feel like Rick Barnes is doing that with Darling Stone Dubar, and I think it's a little unfair for me to call out Dubar when I don't think Rick Barnes – I think he's holding Dubar back because of his philosophy. You know what it reminds you of, Dave? I'm going to give you a great example. Do you remember Kenny O'Neill, the transfer receiver to Tennessee?
Yep, I do.
I remember David Cutcliffe basically defending him, but saying, he's having trouble learning the offense. But then I remember Kenny O'Neill was a massive speedster. So in my mind, I'm like, why are you even making him learn the offense? Why not just turn him loose and let him run vertical during the season? But that's
what the ISO is. I mean, if you can't go after a guy, maybe you don't beat him, but you get it blocked at the rim, I can live with that. I can't live with you just passing up the opportunity and passing into coverage. That to me is.
Maybe he would do ice. You have him riding the bench every game, and then the one time you bring him in is at the end of a half at the number 1 team in the country and say, hey, go score on this ISO play. I mean, I know you would say like, well, that's your moment. Take advantage of your moment. But it's like, it's really hard and a lot in that moment to take advantage of the moment when you haven't been playing at all and have barely been a part of the rotation. See, that's my issue with Rick Barnes. And he's living by this philosophy of, oh, you earn playing time. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's not about the kids earning playing time. It's about the other guys needing rest. And he's going to go into the NCAA tournament again, only 6 deep. And I'm not trying. I mean, I get it. He's had some bad breaks. I mean, he expected to have JP Estrella and Cameron Carr. Both are gone now. So it's been difficult for him. Then the Darlington Dubar personal issue kind of held him back. So he's really 2 men down. Plus Dubar is not where he thought he would be because of the personal issue. But at the same time, you got to sacrifice some of your philosophy in the regular season, man. It's the regular season. It's January basketball. And so you got to say, maybe I can lose this game and sacrifice some principles because I want my kids ready and fresh when the NCAA tournament comes.
Okay. You and I see this one very different because I can go out there, and I hate it when people say this. I could do that. No, you couldn't have thrown it 45 yards, not even 60 like Nico could. But I could have gone out there and gone ISO and got my stuff blocked or got the ball stolen. But I would not have thrown it back into coverage knowing that play was designed for me. To me, that's an effort and then a mindset thing. It's not a lack of ability or not put in the best position thing. Give us an update on our poll question brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. And everyone that joins the channel, be sure and send me an email, Dave@offthehooksports.com. If we can put that in there, you will instantly win a gift certificate to Hound Dogs. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange, hdknoxville.com. And all those on board will also be eligible. You'll pay for your membership right off the get. So go ahead and join. But you'll also be eligible for our weekly prizes of T-shirts and a Celebrate 98 book. And this week, we're going to give away that John Henderson autographed mini helmet that sits right behind me. So, Caleb, update on our poll question.
Who are you coldest on with Tennessee basketball? Igor Milchik is leading the way by a plurality at 40%. And I got to give our audience credit. I mean, I understand that. Igor Milchik has just gone completely cold from 3, and that's the one thing he can do because he's not that physical underneath the basket.
Yep. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, a lot of news over the weekend. Stat of the day coming up, and Kim Caldwell will be on the sideline on Monday. Did she even really have a baby? Can we see this baby for proof? He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Kim Caldwell is the toughest little you-know-what that I've ever seen. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln dealer. No question about it. Stay tuned. More after this.
Hey, Ted, it's time to save some cash for our New Year's Bash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your man.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Give us an update on our poll question, Caleb, but I've got a good one that we can have some fun with. Also, stat of the day coming up. What do we got?
Dave, I think you converted our audience with your brilliance. Got to give you a shout out. It is now who are you coldest on with Tennessee basketball? Darling Stone Dubar has taken over from as a plurality at 32%. Igor's second at 27%. Charles Lanier at 23%, Rick Barnes at 18%. The truth of the matter is this Tennessee fan base is very divided over who to not like right now on the basketball team.
Is that good or bad, Caleb?
Could be good. Maybe they're thinking, why do you guys think we dislike anybody? We almost beat Auburn. They could be thinking that, and they could be thinking they don't know who to dislike because they don't think there's anybody to dislike on the team. But I'm telling you, the Auburn – sorry?
Go ahead. Good. No, I kind of think it's troublesome that you have a debate between 4.
Possibly that too. But the other, I think, look, the Auburn loss is more concerning than I think a lot of you guys would consider, given the fact that it was on the road to the #1 team in the country. If you guys, let's just point this out, Dave. Broom was hurt in that game. I know he had 16 points, but he wasn't 100%, and he was limping for half the game. So this whole Tennessee played Auburn close as the #1 team in the country. They're not the #1 team in the country at full strength, guys.
Okay. Well, they did, though. They did play them close, 1 possession. So I think you're dismissing that just a little bit.
With Auburn's best player playing at 50%.
Still, a lot of people are playing at 50%. Dubar's not 50% or not 100% because of either the personal issues or just not being involved.
And
in the
Dubar is not anywhere near Tennessee's best player.
Okay.
No. You're going to compare Darlingstone Dubar to John Broom on the other side?
No, I'm not. But you would think that Dubar preseason would have at least been in the conversation as Tennessee's one of their best players, but he's not. Stat of the day coming up. How many days pregnancy did Kim Caldwell undergo before she decided to get back on the court? It's astonishingly high, full term, and she's coming back, but that's not our stat of the day. Stat of the day is brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens. Just stop by and you'll get hooked up with Off the Hook Sports t-shirt or a Celebrate 98 book. Plus, you will get $500 off a pool or spa with everything included. Stat of the day coming up, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, stat of the day, 280 days. That is a full-term pregnancy. Kim Caldwell has undergone that, and she'll be coaching today, on Monday, depending on when you're watching this. Is she superhuman? I know you have another stat of the day that's probably more sports related, but I just thought I would throw that in there.
She is either superhuman or she wasn't pregnant. I'm just saying, did anybody actually see a baby bump beforehand when she was on the sideline?
I don't know. I didn't get a chance to inspect her midsection, so I'm not gonna.
You don't have to inspect a midsection to see a baby bump usually, guys. Particularly in the third trimester, it's out.
Well, but I think we believe she had a baby, though, right? Okay, that's our poll question.
I'm trolling. I'm not about to.
That's our poll question. Do you believe Kim Caldwell had a baby? Okay, there we go.
Or was really pregnant.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so what is our real?
I'm doing it, Dave.
Do it. What is our real stat of the day, though?
Okay, before I do it, our real stat of the day, it's a Chaz Lanier stat, and it just shows you how much of a choke artist he is. Chaz Lanier has a true shooting percentage of .554 this year. Dave, on the road, it's at .458. It almost drops 100 points on the road. That is pathetic, quite honestly.
Not good. He's crashing back down to earth. Newbert Collision Center, for nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer support. Now, I want to discuss Kim Caldwell here for a moment. She's back on the sidelines 3 days, essentially, after giving birth, full term. Do you worry that she's back on the sidelines at all? Because if it were my wife, I'd say you could probably take 2 games off and take a week off. I'm not sure that I would want her back on the sidelines. I'm sure the doctors have cleared everything, but goodness gracious, that seems really quick to me.
Seems extremely quick. And honestly, you don't know if it's good for the program because of the distractions. But at the same time, maybe it's better for the program because what you just said, Dave, one of the things that I think really helps kids succeed is if they can see their coach as Superwoman, Superman, whoever that is. Would you agree with that? Like to see them as almost like a larger than life figure. Does that make sense? Yes. And I think doing this kind of makes Kim Caldwell, we know, pushes her players hard. I think this helps make her look like a larger than life figure to a certain degree. To be this demanding and this intense and then have a baby and only miss a game and then come back. I mean, that is like, we always talk about the Pat Summitt stare. That's, Pat Summitt was a larger than life figure before she was winning national champions because she was demanding so much of her players. And it had an effect. And I'm starting to see the same thing with Kim Caldwell, to be this larger than life figure that you honestly see as Superwoman. And I think that's going to have an effect on the players and the level of focus and discipline and effort that they're going to show.
No, I agree with that. And at first, when I was thinking about this morning, our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, I thought that's a little bit of a reach, but I don't now. And I think it's something that'll be pointed to if she wins a championship or they're in the Final Four. They'll say, not this season, but in the next 2 or 3 seasons, they'll say going back, her son or daughter. I'm not sure, is it son or daughter?
I actually don't know.
Okay, this child is now 3 years old, and Kim Caldwell actually had it in the beginning of the season or the middle of the season, and it'll be a great story and one that she recalls, and she'll be remembered as tough because of it. And she fills the shoes of a program that was incredibly tough. Pat Summitt was tough. So do you think there was extra pressure, internal pressure, not by UT saying you really need to get back on the sideline, have that baby, but do you think there was internal pressure to live up to the Pat Summitt mantra of toughness? Because I really do. I think if Kim Caldwell is somewhere at West Virginia, Northwestern State, she's probably taking a week off. I don't think at Tennessee she feels comfortable taking a week off.
I agree, and let's just throw this out here too. I know women's basketball coaches don't make as much as men or anything like that, but she still gets paid pretty well. She's making $750,000 a year, 5-year contract. So she's got $3.75 million in the bank. Any of us would take that in the bank over a 5-year period. I think that I'll say, Dave, here's what it is. I think partially we've all worked day jobs, and when you work a day job, you take advantage of all that. You take advantage of all the vacation you can get, right? You're like, I'm owed this. I'm going on paternity leave or maternity leave, and I want my 3 months or whatever, and give me that. But when you're making $750K a year to deliver specific results, feel like you feel a little bit more dedication to your job, don't you? just a little bit, and whether that goes from there to Josh Heupel to Rick Barnes, I think if the pay increases and is more results based, that you can directly track, like my success is predicated on this, and that's why I'm getting paid, you start to feel more dedication to your job, don't you?
Agreed. This isn't perfectly analogous, but they used to try to ask us at the News Sentinel to take time off during football season. And their current beat reporter, I can't recall his name, he does do that. And I'm told he shuts it down on his 2 days off. I never could do that. And if news was happening on my beat, I had to be there. And I don't know if that's the same thing, Caleb, but I got a lot of comp time that I took, but I guarantee you I never got as much comp time as I actually worked. Because with recruiting, you're also working on Sundays, chasing down recruits. So it wasn't $700,000 in the bank, but I felt a responsibility to be on top of my beat, because I knew from experience that if you had a fill into it without the contacts that I had, it was either feed him contacts and ruin my off day, or it was him not get the job done. That's where we were. As a paper and as a team, just like with you, I wouldn't have wanted to make us look bad. That makes sense?
Well, I totally agree. And for us, like me and you, the pay is not Kim Caldwell pay, but we have something we're working towards, and we have a passion for it. What'd you say?
It will be. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, like I was saying, like we have something we're working towards, and we have a passion for it, and we have a clear blueprint of where we want to go. When you were at the Knoxville News Sentinel, you had something you were covering, something you were passionate about, and also you knew that like there were doors that could open from that. Which, I mean, one did that got you the ESPN job for a while. Now I know you have your own thoughts about working at ESPN, but you got there from your work at the Knoxville News Sentinel, and you knew that was something that could open up because of that. And so I think that's the big thing. You know, Dave, I wanted to ask you, when seeing a coach is superhuman and needing to see them as a larger-than-life figure, do you think that is one of the things that almost kind of derailed Fulmer? Is towards the end of Philip Fulmer Sr., it just felt like the players didn't see him as that larger-than-life figure. They saw him as just a guy who maybe at times wasn't fully sure of what he was doing in certain moments.
Well, I think there's something to that. There was an uncertainty offensively in the final year with Dave Clawson. Before that, with Randy Sanders, who was really calling the shots. That was a question. And the other thing that happened, I don't know if this is a toughness thing or not, but it leads to a discipline issue, is that the players knew that if they could play, they could get in trouble off the field, right?
Right.
They did. I'll say it before. When Philip Fulmer at a Shoney's met with an alleged assault victim the day after it happened with one of his players, lost a lot of credibility. Not to mention that was tampering with a witness. It could have blown up.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And that's not that long. That's 2004-ish.
You're right. That's 2004-ish, and that is dangerously close to, like, I'm not saying Fulmer was Joe Paterno covering up crimes, but that's, you get dangerously close when you start dealing with assault victims and trying to keep things under the rug, and it gets bad. I mean, we're going to talk about Josh Heupel versus Jeremy Pruitt, and I mean, just on a lighter level, it looked ridiculous when Jeremy Pruitt was, lecturing police officers because they were doing their job when they arrested Jeremy Banks. And
I had an attorney call me and say, I can just tell you right now that Coach Fulmer's not real happy with the coverage from the News Sentinel. And I told him, I can tell you right now that I don't give a bleep. Brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Give me 30 seconds, and then I'm going to deliver some pretty insightful differences between Josh Heupel, Ryan Day, and Jeremy Pruitt. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, so we're going to get to today's tough question. Give us a final wrap up with the poll question before we change it up a little bit, Caleb.
Do you believe Kim Caldwell was really pregnant? 2 people say no, 18 say yes.
All right. We think she was really pregnant, right?
I think she was really pregnant. I'm just trolling you guys.
All right. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And I think this one's easy, but maybe for some of you it's not. Today's tough question now.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, you got to pick one. Is Josh Heupel more Ryan Day? In other words, he'll win a championship, or Jeremy Pruitt, he won't win a championship. And I want to pull out some notes and illustrate just how far Tennessee's football program has come. And it's on offthehooksports.com. I'll share a link if you want to read it. But Caleb, this football program is much closer to winning a championship than being an utter embarrassment as it was under Jeremy Pruitt. I have trouble arguing the opposite side of that.
Yes, I agree. It's much closer to winning a championship than it was under Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. By the way, and you wouldn't even show the great Butch Jones respect, who's obviously better than both of these guys, Dave, Ryan Day or Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Butch Jones is a legend. Okay. He went 9-4.
Worst hair mistake? Is it Butch Jones's haircut, or is it Ryan Day likes a Sharpie to take a Sharpie to his?
I don't know, but don't you know that Butch Jones set records at Tennessee by going 9-4 2 years in a row? That was a historic accomplishment, Dave.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so they're much closer to winning a championship. Now, as far as the question is Butch Jones, is Josh Heupel more like Ryan Day or Jeremy Pruitt? In terms of quality of coach, I'm willing to go the Ryan Day route. But Dave, I'm going the Jeremy Pruitt route, but not in the way you think. So just bear with me here, okay? I think the reason he's more like Jeremy Pruitt is, say whatever you want about Jeremy Pruitt. Jeremy Pruitt had some unique, valuable football skills. Jeremy Pruitt ran the defense. That was his defense. He has his own defensive scheme. And as you point out, he actually was ahead of the curve on some defensive coaching back in the day. The same way Josh Heupel was with offensive. Jeremy Pruitt could evaluate talent well. I'm going to say it. I think Ryan Day was a mascot for this national title team. I think Ryan Day did as much for this title team as Ed Orgeron did for LSU in 2019. I get Ryan Day had a cutting-edge offense, but the Ohio State administration took that offense out of his hands and gave it to Chip Kelly. So with Chip Kelly running the show, Dave, what did Ryan Day do this year?
Fair, and they just lost their defensive coordinator, who is highly coveted. But I do think Ryan Day's a strong offensive mind. Now, Chip Kelly certainly helped out, but I think Ryan Day is a good offensive mind. I think comparing Heupel to Pruitt, you have to say this, that Pruitt has an advantage in talent evaluation. I believe you and I would agree with that. They're a wash in terms of coaches. Pruitt was able to head up an entire defense, get guys in the right position. I think he was an innovative edge rusher coach. I think that Heupel is innovative as well, and the offense obviously has done well in 2022. And I thought, given that its deficiencies, was pretty strong in 2024. Now, the one thing that you have to point to Heupel when comparing the two is running a program. And there's a column on offthehooksports.com right now. And I would encourage you to check it out because I wrote it, but more so because
shameless plug. Okay.
You're about 4 years removed from Tennessee just being an absolute embarrassment. First of all, let's take a look at Tennessee just in terms of pure winning. I forgot that Jeremy Pruitt, his record was that bad. He was 5-19. Heupel is 37-15. But the thing I point back to is the Jeremy Banks arrest. He threatened police officers, and then Pruitt's response was just utterly idiotic and distasteful. He said, quote, "This is the silliest thing I've ever seen in my life." He was recorded by police officers. "I've worked at 4 places and never had no crap like this except for here." Fantastic grammar, but Jeremy Pruitt he was so out of touch. Police officers have body cameras now. They don't have a choice a lot of times to let an athlete go because they recognize him. Trust me, that used to happen all of the time, especially with university police that would essentially say, "That's a football player. I'm not going to talk about it." I'd be like, okay. That used to happen, but that's like 20 years old. So Pruitt, just out of pure idiocy, at some point, Caleb, was going to screw things up because he didn't understand how much football had changed and society had changed in the modern world. That's how bad it could have gone. There was another NCAA violation or legal issue coming with Jeremy Pruitt. There's not with Josh Heupel. I look back at the running back, Lynn J.T. Dixon or whatever his name was. He shows up on campus. It was odd right before preseason camp last year, and they ran him after a couple of weeks because he wasn't a good attitude guy. So I don't think that ever happens under Josh Heupel, which is a first major step in the right direction.
All right, so as a CEO, I think Josh Heupel's more like Ryan Day, which is a good thing because I think Ryan Day's a better CEO than Jeremy Pruitt. But as just a ball guy, I think Josh Heupel's more like Jeremy Pruitt because, Dave, hot take, I think Jeremy Pruitt's a better ball guy than Ryan Day is in terms of just knowing ball. And I'm going to be honest with you. If you take the CEO side of coaching, and I'm not trying to dismiss it because that's a big part of it. We've seen coaches. Larry Coker couldn't do the CEO side, even if he was a good offensive mind, and Miami just fell apart because of how undisciplined it became under him. But do you not think that if Jeremy Pruitt is at Ohio State and you just take him coaching ball, he can't do exactly what Ryan Day's been doing at Ohio State? It's Ohio State.
Okay, here's why. Okay, strictly from a ball standpoint, I see what you're getting at. And I probably was a guy that 10 years ago would have agreed with you. But I think the part of ball now that is very significant is being an offensive mind. In other words, I would have taken the tough guy who teaches edge rushers how to get to the quarterback, the defensive coach. I would have taken that guy 10 years ago. That was very Nick Saban-esque, which is why Jeremy Pruitt was hired at Tennessee in the first place. But I think knowing offensive scheme and being able to design offenses is now being a ball guy. And so I've changed a little bit. You don't have to be the tough, grumpy, physical ball guy that John Chavis was or Jeremy Pruitt was, but you can be an intellectual ball guy. So I'm calling that a wash with Heupel getting maybe a little bit of an advantage in my mind.
Oh, no, but that's what I mean. Heupel versus Jeremy Pruitt, I have them similar, and I might even give Heupel an advantage. I just think they're both better at ball than Ryan Day is, significantly. And that's where I'm landing.
Agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know when Jeremy Pruitt's show cause is up, but Ohio State just lost its defensive coordinator. As long as you didn't give him the access to any funds, and now that NIL is a thing and it's really hard to cheat, I would totally call Jeremy Pruitt when his show cause is up. I don't care what school I am. I would absolutely be all about Jeremy Pruitt, and I would probably upgrade my defensive coaching staff.
1,000%. I would take Jeremy Pruitt as a defensive coordinator right now. And that's why it's hard for me to say. It seems like Josh Heupel is more similar to Jeremy Pruitt in that way. Also, we have to factor this in. Where it's different for coaching back in the day, Dave, and you know this, the CEO side, there's a lot of people beyond the coaches that get to do that now, right? You got a lot of administrators that handle that stuff, don't you? And so I don't think the coach has to be the CEO. So I don't even think I'm going just all and everything. I would take Jeremy Pruitt over Ryan Day, because I don't even think Ryan Day is a CEO. He's a mascot. He's a mascot. That's it. He is Ed Orgeron at LSU, and only Ed Orgeron could be a mascot and still screw things up because he's bringing, young cheerleaders to campus to show off, hey guys, I like my new girlfriend. And so, I mean, but Ryan Day is
right now.
What'd you say?
Why am I jealous of Ed Orgeron right now? Okay, I will give you,
because he would love to be hanging out in Destin with like an LSU buyout of $17 million. I'm telling you, he's going to be broke.
I'll give you another coach to compare him to. Jerry Green. Ryan Day is Jerry Green without a drinking problem. Because literally, Jerry Green,
he was
a mascot of that team. And he had great coaches around him. He had Steve Forbes, who is now having success at Wake, right? He had Jason Shea, who was the guy who would absolutely scout the opponent.
Well, no. Jason Shea was under Bruce Pearl.
Okay, sorry. Chris Ferguson. Excuse me. Chris Ferguson was very good. I don't know if you remember him at scouting the opponent. And they had another coach that was really good too. He had a real deep voice. And I remember one time he called one of my radio shows and complained about what I was saying about Jerry Green. And I called him. I said, "That was you. I know it was you." He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." "I don't know what you're talking about." Yes, I know it was you. But Jerry Green was a mascot. So maybe is Ryan Day more like Jerry Green or Jeremy Pruitt?
Oh, I think at this point, Jerry Green. Because, again, Pruitt knows ball. So I would put Heupel in the Jeremy Pruitt camp. I don't think Jeremy Pruitt, because of the level of support that's now there for coaches that wasn't even there when he was at. I mean, Dave, we're kind of forgetting how different today is just from 2019 for coaches now. There was so much extra support for them. Jeremy Pruitt wouldn't have to do the CEO stuff anymore. And if he could just focus on ball, he would still struggle because his offenses were in a problem and there were just some other major issues. But I do think if you put him in a place like Ohio State, which again, at Ohio State, you always talk about the war daddies, the big nasties. Ohio State's the one state outside of the South where you can get the war daddies and win. Yep. And Ohio State and California are probably the only two, right, where you could win with war daddies just from that state. And
the problem in California is they're 50% of the time soft.
Well, and the other 50% of the time, they don't want to stay in California.
Yeah.
They want to go to the South. They want to go to the SEC a lot of times. But like in general, there's enough war daddies in both of those states where you could win a national title with just talent in those states. And they're the only two states outside of the South that are like that, honestly.
This day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Also on the program here in a second, the college football TV ratings were a disaster. We'll bank on it. Is that a problem? Recruiting wrap, 4 prospects that you need to know about, 4 downs. As we remind you, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. When it comes to Ford Lincoln, they have absolutely perfected the buying process. I will be down there this week looking for a Bronco, and I'm excited. Stay tuned. This day in Tennessee sports history coming up next.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible. For camping, tailgating, the options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep, boop, beep, bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300. Or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports.
I don't know if anybody gets that. And knowing is half the battle. Caleb, you're probably too young. And now you know. Knowing is half the battle. Do you know what that is?
I've heard that phrase, but I don't know what that's from. Is that from something I should know about?
Probably not. You're too young. But the old G.I. Joe cartoon at the end of it, they would give you a little tip, like, look both ways before crossing the street. That was, and now you know, knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. That was where that's from. So Tennessee Smokey saying Hook is running shallow on topics. Is Caldwell really pregnant? Is Heupel more like Jeremy Pruitt? No, I don't think we're running short on topics whatsoever. I think we're doing quite well. We appreciate you tuning in, Tennessee Smokey. Hit that like and subscribe button. Yes, G.I. Joe. That's where that reference is from. And knowing is half the battle. We're chock full of topics. So Tennessee, this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our great friends at Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. It's peakivhydration.com. I'll drop that in the chat. You can order online and get the patches that will absolutely take care of you. All right, what do you got, Caleb? This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Peak IV Hydration.
Well, I got to this day in Tennessee sports history, but then I have a nice, just little history event that I have to point out just for Dave. It is just for Dave, guys. So just hold off on this because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Charging of the Capitol.
No. This day in Tennessee sports history is the 4-year anniversary to the day that Josh Heupel was hired as head coach, as we talked about last segment, and it's worth keeping that in mind because we have to insist on where Tennessee was at that moment. Now, for a little fun, I want to see if Dave understands the context of why I would really like to share this screen. This was a game on October the 17th, 2015, between Georgia and Missouri. This was the score, Dave. Now, please tell me what's relevant about this score.
9-6.
Yes.
That Georgia beats Missouri 9-6. You would think that Georgia would be able to beat Missouri by a larger margin at the time. So what's the significance?
The Georgia offensive coordinator at the time was the new Cowboys head coach, Brian Schottenheimer.
Thank you.
And I know Dave is so excited about Brian Schottenheimer being promoted to head coach of the Cowboys as a Cowboy fan.
Yes, that's what we need. A Schottenheimer, which actually, you may not know this, is German for can't win playoff game. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but it sounds like it. But Dave, both of our favorite teams now have a coach by the name of Brian, who is the son of another NFL head coach in the past. I got Brian Callahan. You got Brian Schottenheimer. So who's worse run, the Titans or the Cowboys? That's a question. Who's more incompetent? Which ownership is more incompetent?
I've thought about this before since you're a Titans fan. I really think it's equal. I think one group doesn't evaluate talent. That's the Titans. The other group evaluates talents but picks favorites, and that's how they pay players, which screws up their salary cap. So I've thought about this. I think they're equally inept, but for different reasons.
That's fair. I kind of agree with you on that. But they're in a fight for 1 and 2 now because the Commanders have lost Dan Snyder. And so with Dan Snyder gone, it's between the Titans and the Cowboys for most incompetent. Before we set up our other poll question for the next topic, I'm just going to save it. I'm putting that up now just to see what people think.
Where are we going here? Because we did Josh Heupel, Ryan Day, and Jeremy Pruitt. So where do you want to go here?
Josh Heupel, Ryan Day, and Jeremy Pruitt, all of whom are more competent. So let's go ahead and move on because we've also hit Kim Caldwell. Let's talk a little bit about those.
What about
Tim Banks' contract? Let's talk about Tim Banks' contract.
Right. Tennessee did something really weird on Friday that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What the H? And it is brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo at Quality Tire Pros that Dave Hooker said hello.
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
What the H? A media tutorial, if you may. You release information on Friday afternoon. It's considered a news dump. And Tennessee didn't release Banks re-signing with Tennessee, but they might as well have because BallQuest.com does a great job of covering Tennessee. They're tied in there, and they reported it Friday afternoon. So either Banks leaked it to them or somebody at UT leaked it to them, and they got to have it first. Tennessee has not sent out a release yet to this point, Caleb, but nevertheless, they didn't send out a release when it was done. They let it come out as a breaking news report, and I don't understand that. I've said for 4 years that Tim Banks is a fantastic piece of this staff, that he should be celebrated even when Tennessee seemingly was struggling on defense. They were struggling because of personnel, not because of Tim Banks. I think this is a re-upping, a re-signing that you should be incredibly proud of. Banks goes from $1.5 million to 2.1-ish. I mean, that's a raise, but still $2 million for a coordinator is not overpaying in this climate of college athletics. Is Tennessee ashamed of this re-signing?
I think Josh Heupel might be. Josh Heupel's a little bit cocky. We can agree on that, right? A little bit arrogant. With this Tim Banks contract, he is now officially the 4th highest paid assistant coach in college football. In December of last year, the top 3 were LSU defensive coordinator Blake Baker making 2.5, Michigan defensive coordinator Wink Martindale making 2.3, Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles making 2.2, and then Ole Miss defensive coordinator Pete Golding making 2.15. Banks is now making 2.15. And Jim Knowles has just left Ohio State. He moved over to Penn State. I don't know if he got more money. I don't know what his contract is. That's not out yet. I can't imagine that he took more money to go to Penn State. It seems like just a move to go home, right? Actually, no, I'm looking at it now. He's got Jim Knowles now has a 3-year, $9.3 million contract. So Jim Knowles is making $3.1 million as an assistant coach. So he's number 1. So that puts Tim Banks tied with Pete Golding for number 4. I think a lot of times, and maybe this is changing, Dave, but when you pay assistants a certain amount of money, it gives off the vibe that it's not your program and you're dependent on those assistants. Nobody wants to look like, no head coach with an ego wants to look like, let's say it, Philip Fulmer, who looked like Fulmer looked like a coach who needed certain assistants to have success. And nobody wants to look like that.
I completely disagree. I think not question you, but for those that follow college football very closely, I think that Steve Spurrier needed Stoops and Charlie Strong as his defensive coordinator. I think most coaches do. I mean, there may be exceptions like Joe Paterno or Tom Osborne that know both sides of the ball, or Nick Saban, but ultimately, I think one guy's going to be better versed in one side of the ball and needs somebody he can trust to run the other side of the ball. That's what Tennessee had with John Chavis. And you would have said that because of the relationship that the players had with Chavis and because of the fact that he knew to put them in the most simple positions possible, Chavis was as dependent upon as Tim Banks. And that resulted in 2 championships, 1 a national title.
But again, and there was nothing wrong with that. To Fulmer's credit, he didn't care. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm saying Josh Heupel has an ego. Josh Heupel wants to be the Nick Saban. He wants to be seen as Nick Saban of this is all his team. But he knows he needs Tim Banks. So they open the contract for Tim Banks, but he doesn't want to be seen as a guy dependent on a staff member, Dave. I honestly don't think that. Look, we just saw Josh Heupel this past year willingly adjust his offense and go more 12 personnel and win with defense. A part of that is because he had to, because of his situations. But Dave, a part of that, I think Josh Heupel wanted to prove he could win that way. And I think Josh Heupel wanted to prove that he could win with the physical, grinded out football program that doesn't have to air it out all the time. Not that he doesn't want to air it out. He'd love to. But I do think Josh Heupel is the type of coach that he wants the Nick Saban credit. Look, I got to be honest. I've covered a lot of coaches. Josh Heupel is one of the cockiest coaches I've ever covered. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but Josh Heupel is one of probably the 5 cockiest coaches I've ever covered. He thinks very highly of himself, and he likes getting the credit for everything. And he wants to be viewed as somewhat of a Nick Saban.
Couple of messages from the message board. Did the Ohio State DC leave for a $3 million offer from Penn State? If so, Banks is still underpaid. That is the case. Banks never adjusted, stayed stuck in the mud. What's sad is how vanilla he started his calls with a month of preparation. I think that's by design. I believe that Tennessee wanted to be more vanilla because they had more talent. And then one last post from Dylan. Banks is too inconsistent for me. Missouri last year, Arkansas this year, Georgia this year, OSU. It's just too many glaring mistakes for me to offer up that much. So there is the debate.
How are you blaming Tim Banks for Arkansas this year? That wasn't his fault at all.
No. Is Tim Banks overpaid or underpaid? Let's make that the poll question, if you don't mind, Caleb. What the H, brought to you in part by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. So there we go. We'll set up the poll question. Travis asked, why pay Banks more? Well, it's pretty simple. Clemson and Miami made a run at him, and they were going to pay him probably $2.15 million, and Tennessee had to match that. It's ultimately what he's worth in a market economy, and Miami and Clemson helped Tennessee determine that. And Banks would be silly not to use that sort of leverage to get more money. That's human nature, Caleb. I don't hold that against him.
No, that's your job. Take the money. That pay raises are nice, right? I mean, and also, like, we're talking, look, I know that, like, if you're making $1.5 million, that's a lot of money. But in that situation, $500,000 or $600,000 is a lot of extra money, isn't it? I mean, we'd all take a 25% pay increase.
Right. This is not Nick Saban going from $9 to $10 million and you yawn because he's already okay. Yeah, this is a totally separate situation. A totally separate situation is at work trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process, quick and easy when choosing a vehicle from Work Trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed. They're fantastic. They have the vehicles right there. You need Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to worktruckswithanxllc.com. Worktruckswithanxllc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. They'll have you fit to a T. Worktruckswithanxllc.com. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. That is East Tennessee's largest Lincoln and Ford volume dealer. They are fantastic, and the buying process is unbelievable. You're going to be blown away. All right, college football TV ratings. Let's jump into that. Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Life Made Better, member FDIC. You say that the ratings are a sign that the college football playoff in its inaugural 12-team season was an utter disaster and a fiasco. Caleb, why do you feel so strongly about that?
It was a total disaster. The national title game drew 22.1 million viewers. They regularly drew 25 million during the 14 college football playoff, and it got up to the 30s in some cases. Now, some people are going to bring up, well, what about the Georgia TCU game of 2022-23? Yeah, that was a 65-3 blowout. Everybody turned that game off midway through because it was a horrible game. But there were a lot of other better rated games during the college football playoff during that time. So just for a quick stat, a total of 170.5 million people tuned in to the college football playoff this year. That's 15.5 million per game. The 14 college football playoff over 10 years averaged 22.22 million per game. So nearly 7 million more per game during the 14 college football playoff. Now, I'm not naive. Okay, let me be upfront. Just by sheer nature of games, you're going to have more people see the 12-team college football playoff, so you're going to make more money. So it's 170.5 million versus 66.67 million because it was only 3 games. I get that. I'm not naive. But you're missing the whole story if you look at it that way. Because, Dave, let's start with this. The expanded playoff benefited from the novelty this year, right? The first year of anything has the novelty concept that brings in more viewers.
Yes.
So it's not going to repeat what it just did, guys. I'm just telling you guys that up front. It's not going to repeat. This was the novelty year, so the ratings were going to be as good as they ever will be. Okay?
I disagree. I completely disagree. I think they'll be better. I think the college football playoff is going to determine what they got right and wrong. There were times we didn't know when the games were on. I knew 10 years ago that the conference championship games would be at 3 and 6:30. I didn't know when the college football playoff games were going to be. So there has to be some sort of consistency to that. They'll learn that, and they'll fine-tune the matchups. So I completely disagree that it can't get better from here. The NFL's ratings have just gotten better over the years.
The NFL has done one. The NFL lives and breathes parity to a certain degree that college football never can.
I think it will. I think it will.
I don't think it will.
I think the top 40 programs, after what I saw Notre Dame do, and you pointed out earlier with essentially a first team and half of the second team. No, I think that you can stay healthy and be in the right position at the end of the year.
I don't think it can ever get to the level of parity of the NFL. The NFL has marketed and taken over a Sunday. And by the way, one of the things that held back the college football playoff specifically was it coincided with the NFL playoffs. And that was drawing more talk. I mean, we talked about that 2 weeks ago, or I guess it was a week ago now, for the Ohio State winning the national title, where it was, it happened the same day as Trump's inauguration and Martin Luther King Day and right after the NFL playoffs. And it became an afterthought, honestly. And it was really problematic. I'm telling you, It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, even if they adjust it. They could afford, here's the thing, Dave, they could afford to have a bad format this year. The novelty of it alone should have sold it way better than it did. And here's the short-sighted part, because here's what the novelty did. I'll say this up front. The novelty of the college football playoff this year kept the regular season ratings high. The regular season ratings, guys, are going to collapse over the course of the next 10 years, because the biggest selling point college football had that no other sport in the history of sports had was when number one played number two. Up until about 10 years ago, there were national title implications in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was basic. Yeah. I mean,
that maybe as a whole, the viewership will be down slightly. I'll give you some of that, but I don't really think so. I think that there's still the passion for football. So you could see perhaps the regular season drop slightly. I don't think it's going to be significant, because even the fans that I hear that are frustrated by NIL and the transfer portal, and there's a lot out there, there are very few that say I'm out. When I talk to fans, they say I'm reluctantly in. And maybe that's the next step, is saying I'm out. But I don't hear many fans saying I'm so frustrated by NIL, because I think morally it was the right thing to do, and the transfer portal, which I think was morally the right thing to do. I don't hear many fans, Caleb, that just say I'm out. I've heard some. I've heard some.
But this is the mistake you're making. You're talking about the fans. I don't talk about the fans, Dave. I talk about the casuals. What is college football going to do to bring in the casuals? I'm talking about the guy, I'm talking about, Bill's Aunt Gladys over here that maybe once a year watches a sporting event. And maybe that sporting event back in the day would be the college football national title, or Alabama versus Auburn if there were two top 5 teams, or Michigan versus Ohio State if it was 1 versus 2. That's not happening anymore. The casual Aunt Gladys isn't about to tune into any of those games. They're going to watch their daytime soap operas instead. And I'm just honest, that's a problem long-term for college football. It's not the NFL. My wife likes the Packers, but she's not like a die-in-the-wool like NFL every game fan. She still watched the AFC and NFC title games with me yesterday. And I'm like, college football isn't going to draw the same in that way. It's just, and it was doing that. I don't think there's a college football game anymore that's going to draw in an average Joe Schmo that doesn't really care about college football, but would be like, I'd love to see that game. I bet it'd be a fun game. There were 7 million fewer people watched. There were 7 million fewer viewers per college football playoff game this year than there were last year. 7 million is a lot of people. That's a ton of people. There is a problem. And yes, they formatted it badly. They extended it way too long. It shouldn't be going into the NFL playoffs. All right. They were also losing to the NFL playoffs. Attendance was an issue. And don't even get me started on the fact, Dave, that one of the biggest weekends in college football that's a huge rating draw used to be Conference Championship Week. That was dead this year. How little did people care about Conference Championship Week? Because everybody was going to the playoff.
Dead. How have the changes in college football affected your fandom? A little, a lot, I'm out. How about that? Poll question brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Go to facebook.com and follow them at Sports Treasures TN, Caleb. So poll question will be that. How have the changes in college football affected your fandom? A little, a lot, I'm out. So we may be joined by a former Vol that we're working on, Steve Hamer, here momentarily, and we'll talk some Tennessee basketball, brought to you in part by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. I feel like this is something we'll get used to. I'm a little older. I've been through this. Free agency, when I saw the Cowboys get ripped apart in the early 90s when free agency hit, and I saw Deion Sanders bouncing all over the league from the Niners to the Cowboys, I'll be honest with you, it was distasteful. And I was like, I don't want to see this, but now I'm used to it. I'm not completely used to it in college football, but I think I will be. Do you, as fans, and feel free to throw us a comment on the message board and we'll make reference to it. Do you feel like you can adjust and switch? Because I think you can. And I think you will.
As a college football fan, I will. College football can make the stupidest decisions possible that I'd be opposed to, and they can move their games to Wednesday afternoon, and I'll be a college football fan because that's like my passion. I love the sport, and I would do it. I would watch every game. But I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about drawing in newer fans long term. Free agency in the NFL, we have proof of it now, brought more parity, and that helped the NFL, Dave, reach a market audience that I think it's like now 47% of NFL fans are women. I guarantee you that number was below 25% before free agency. I almost guarantee you it was below 25% in the 90s. And I think that has made the NFL so marketable. They have taken over Sunday. There are probably deeply religious people that are willing to skip church for NFL games now that wouldn't have been willing to do that in 1995. And so that's the big point. And I also want to point out, it's funny you say Dion. Some people might call Dion a ring chaser more than an actual producer for his teams.
Yeah, but he was a producer. I mean, there's no question about it. What did Dylan have to say there? It's on the message board, Caleb.
Dylan says college football is a lot more regional than the NFL. People in Memphis still root for the Cowboys because that was all that would come on TV back in the day. That's very true, actually. For college football, everyone has their school. Dylan, I get your point, but the problem is a lot of these schools, now maybe NIL will change this. And we're still in the early stages of NIL on the transfer portal. But most schools are very aware that they will never have a shot to compete for any sort of title in college football. And it's not like college basketball where, let's be fair, Dave. I mean, you know this. If you're in a power conference, if you're any team in a power conference, you can get the right coach and go win a national title, honestly. There are haves and have-nots in college football. And I'll just say this as someone who was a Maryland grad. Every Maryland fan does not care about college football because they know there is not a chance in hell they will ever compete for a national title in college football. It's not happening and it never will. And there's no way to fix that.
I got a question for you to that regard. What did Adam have to say first on our message board?
That's my point, Dylan, because it's regional, yet truly nationwide. College football generates more revenue, not to the monopoly broadcasting.
Okay. What's more likely in 10 years, that Vanderbilt wins a national championship or the Dallas Cowboys and Tennessee Titans, our favorite two teams, win a Super Bowl? Let's test the parity as you see it, Caleb, because I'll say right now, Vanderbilt is throwing money at their athletic departments and the individual programs. They're more likely to win a national championship within the next 10 years than the Cowboys or Titans winning the Super Bowl. Chew on that.
No, not true. Because because here's the thing you're missing. There's so much parity in the NFL, Dave, that incompetent owners can still be successful. The Titans might get lucky. The Titans, if they draft Shedeur Sanders, who you and I both believe in, it has nothing to do with their ownership. They just lucked into potentially a generational talent at quarterback. Look at Jim Irsay, one of the most incompetent human beings in the history of the world. But he got a Super Bowl because he lucked into drafting Peyton Manning. And I mean, so that's the thing with the
person
NFL.
I've ever interviewed that I think was incredibly intoxicated at like 10 in the morning.
Really? Jerry Green wasn't intoxicated at 10 in the morning?
Well, he hit it better. Let's say that. No, but it was so bizarre.
Jim Irsay, do I not win the argument with Jim Irsay, though, what you just said? Jim Irsay's the proof for me.
Probably. But I could flip it with Dan Snyder. He couldn't get anything going.
He never lucked into the top pick with Peyton Manning as the guy. When you get a generational quarterback that's once in a – I mean, look, if Peyton Manning were drafted by like a halfway competent NFL owner, he's got as many Super Bowl rings as Tom Brady. He does. And, yeah.
Recruiting news you absolutely need to know about. Bank on it. Tennessee's recruiting for the 2026 class will be brought to you by Commercial Bank. Life made better. Member FDIC. A recruiting update you need to know about. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios where they perfected the buying process. Recruiting news, hit that like button. Give me 2 minutes off the Hook Sports. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical.
Here we go. This was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I put it in the message board 4 years after why you should be so appreciative of Josh Heupel. You can read that in offthehooksports.com. The other link that I'm going to drop in the message board, encourage you to check out as we go through some of these names. Tennessee with a big junior weekend as a junior day on Saturday as they bring guys in for the 2026 class. So there you go. That's right there. It'll be 4 downs coming up. And we discussed earlier that we do believe Kim Caldwell actually had a baby. So that's good. We do trust her. What if she just wanted a couple of days off in the middle of the season? And she said, have you ever done that where you took a new job? You say, oh, I'm excited and stuff, but I just want to remind you that I have a cruise already scheduled for the 3rd week of my employment or the 1st week of my employment. So if you don't mind, it's going to be a couple of weeks before I can join you. I've done that at every single new job I've taken.
Dave, I'm expecting, and I'm due in October, and so I'm going to have to take a couple of football weeks off.
Nice.
To recover.
Caldwell did leading in. She just said, hey, I could use some time off in January. Yeah, she had a plan heading in.
She had a planned cruise in the middle. She's like, it conflicts with the Texas game. I got to make up this whole I'm pregnant story.
Yeah, it explains the no baby bump. Steve Hamer will not be able to join us today. We think we'll get him tomorrow, the former Vol, as we talk some Tennessee hoops. But let's go ahead and get to 4 downs right now because it is big time recruiting, and we're going to have recruiting news for you pretty much every day on the show. So please hit that like and subscribe button, be a part of the program. We greatly appreciate that. As let's go ahead and dive into some recruiting coverage. It is 4 downs, 4 prospects that you need to know about.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I feel like there are some times when we point to Rodney Garner and we say, great recruiter, and we probably forget a William Inge, who is not on that recruiting level, but is really key to Tennessee in recruiting. And he's probably more the guy that helps close linebackers that show up on campus, whereas Garner's the one that goes out and tours them and talks them into coming to campus. But when I introduce Rodney Colton Jr., a 4-star athlete, to you out of Noonan High School, Georgia, he told On3 that a budding relationship with Tennessee's linebackers coach, William Inge, is the heart of his recruitment. Talked about taking a look at the 5 coverages: hook, curl, flat, man. And he was running him through that. The Vols firmly in his top 5. 6 foot, 220-pound athlete prospect recently decommitted from South Carolina after a visit from Ole Miss. His recruiting is opening up, and a young man who's expected to play linebacker at the college level. But clearly, we say this all the time. One in Georgia you want to get because it makes a statement, and a 4-star out of Georgia is one that you definitely want, Caleb.
Yes, and William Inge closing the deal is a big deal because William Inge, we talked ball guy versus CEO. William Inge is like Rodney Garner's the ball guy, right? Like Rodney Garner's like with what he does recruiting, he's going to talk ball, he's going to demand things, and he's going to develop. William Inge, though, is like this was such a big pickup for Tennessee, and he is a CEO type, even though he's just the linebackers coach because of his experience closing the deal as Fresno State's defensive coordinator, Washington's associate head coach. He has NFL experience working for Chan Gailey, and he's worked with Kalen DeBoer. I think this was a recruiting move as much as it was a develop linebackers move after Brian Jean-Marie left for Michigan. And I think that he is a huge part of Tennessee closing the deal on the recruiting trail with Rodney Colton Jr. And let's be honest, Tennessee's got to build more depth up there at linebacker. I mean, they had a couple of issues. 2 years in a row, they had trouble replacing Keenan Peely. And Arian Carter last year was not the best in coverage. And look, I've covering William Inge, he did a tremendous job as Washington's defensive coordinator.
Yep. Colton is first down. Second down, Anthony Jones, 4-star edge rusher from Crean Lutheran High School in Irvine, California. He told GoVolsExtra.com GoVols247, GoVolsExtra.com is the site I started. GoVols247.com that Tennessee is, quote, probably my #1 school right now, and that he got to visit with Josh Heupel one-on-one. So this is a big one too that Tennessee is in great shape with. He is a 4-star edge rusher, again, out of California. And I've always thought that the pipeline to California is a little overblown, but it is something that you want because Tennessee was recruiting Casey Clausen, and he was willing to come, and then a stopover flight by Randy Sanders led to Arian Foster. So you can stumble onto jewels in recruiting the Western United States of America, but I don't think it's a necessity for Tennessee, but it's a nice little bonus to have in your bag. You might pick up a guy. You now have Nico. You would think you would pick up more guys. So I think Jones could be a big pickup for Tennessee.
Oh, and I think he will be. They're going to land Jones. I mean, you talk about the what Rodney Garner has done with edge rushers. I know you say James Pierce was misused. He's still going to be first-round draft pick. Byron Young went from stocking groceries to becoming a first-round draft pick. He's the Kurt Warner of defensive linemen, honestly. And Jordan Ross is about to be one too because guys, you heard it here first. Jordan Ross is better than James Pierce, and Anthony Jones is seeing that and saying, "I want to be a part of that rotation." They're going to land him. I can just tell you that right now.
I think they will do. Keyshawn Stansel, 4-star defensive lineman from Clayton High School in North Carolina. Again, the Rodney Garner tie is key. He is a defensive lineman, a little bit in between. Will he be an edge rusher? Will be a defensive tackle? Probably grow into a defensive tackle. He said that Garner and he talk almost every other day on the phone. That is a significant tie. And he said he also likes the fact that Garner has been in the game for 36 or 35 years, which he has, makes me feel old, as that's how long Rodney Garner's been coaching. So, again, Rodney Garner's success and attention to detail. Let's not just refer to him as a guy who rests on his resume. He's not. He's contacting this young man every couple of days. Again, while Rodney Garner, we could make the argument, is more important than any other coach on the staff, including Tim Banks, any other assistant. But Stansel is a guy that Tennessee is in great shape with, and he knows that there is a strong tie between North Carolina prospects and Tennessee going back to the championship days under Philip Fulmer.
This prospect, Keyshawn Stansel, is going to test your theory over whether or not the North Carolina pipeline dries up because of Bill Belichick. And because if Bill Belichick is
dry up, but I think there'll be one or two or three guys that you want that you won't get because Belichick comes in and goes,
well, if Bill Belichick wanted, why do you make him not? Why did you make him sound not articulate? He's quiet, but he's smart and articulate.
Yeah, we're on to 2025. We're on to 2025.
Yeah, okay, that was better. The first one was almost like an Ed Orgeron without the crazy voice first, but like,
so I need to do an Ed Orgeron without the intoxication.
Do you think he's drunk right now? It's 11:41 in Destin. You think he's already drinking?
No question. No question.
All right, so to this point with Keyshawn Stansel and Bill Belichick, I'm just saying it because if you're going to, he's for the 2026 class, if you're going to do what Belichick wants to do, he's a defensive whiz, and his forte is actually pass rush, Dave, as you know. I mean, this is the guy that turned Lawrence, that built everything around Lawrence Taylor. We forget about that history. Keyshawn Stansel's a guy he's got to go after. So this will test the pipeline of North Carolina, and they got to go after him hard. Now, here's the thing. If he doesn't land with North Carolina, the other competition is LSU, who's apparently going heavily after him. So, but whether or not he lands at LSU or Tennessee or North Carolina, the test of this is on Bill Belichick and the power Bill Belichick has over that state, and if he can actually make an impact, because this is a guy he's got to go for. And so we're going to see if that pipeline dries up.
We'll have an update on Tyler Atkinson, Rodney Durham, Joe Wyatt, and Jordan Smith, David, as we will have 4 to know each and every day on offthehooksports.com, or at least early in the week. So we'll follow up on those guys in particular. Caleb, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We're going to get into another topic that I think you'll be pleased with.
Are we going to talk Grant Wise real quick?
Yeah, we're going to talk Grant Wise. Grant Wise coming up. That'll be Fourth Down, brought to you by Banks & Jones. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott. All right, so fourth down, let's get to Grant Wise. Grant Wise is, let me give you some wisdom on Grant Wise. How's that? Reach.
I love that. But
a four-star offensive lineman from Pace High School told Go Vols 24/7 that Tennessee is definitely one of his top schools. 6'3", 210 pounds. He's been to Tennessee 3 times since June, including a trip to see the Vols win over Alabama last season. What do you think of Wise? And then we'll talk Alabama here for a second, how clutch that was for Tennessee recruiting that they were able to beat the Crimson Tide.
So Grant Wise, by the way, you had me thrown off for a minute because for some reason I read 210 over 310 for his weight. And I'm like, what? Like, that's not an offensive lineman you want, 6'3", 210.
Sorry,
He
that's
is.
a mistyping there. If we can change that on the side, he is 310.
But no, it says 310. I read 210.
I'm reading 210 right now.
Oh, maybe it was 310. Okay. All right. Sorry. Typo. So anyways, Grant Wise, this would be a big one for Tennessee to pick up, obviously, and for Alabama and Florida too, because I think Florida's going to get in the running with the NIL money they're spending. I don't know where he's going to end up, but given what's happened down in the Sunshine State, I think Billy Napier is going to keep this kid in Florida, Dave, if I'm being honest. Florida is dead set on not giving Billy Napier any excuses anymore and wanting to buy up every recruit in that state if they possibly can. And they're going to do it because Florida State and Miami are bleeding recruits right now. So that's Florida is about to. Guys, hold your nose. I know you can laugh at Billy Napier all you want, and we do too, but Florida is absolutely going to get loaded up on talent in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they'll win a significant amount, and I think you're comparing them to the same program that sent back Jaden Rashada because they didn't have the NIL money in line. I mean, anything after that is an improvement.
Yes, but they're also in a situation, Dave, where Florida State's a disaster because of what just happened. In Miami, no one's believing in Mario Cristobal. I think Miami hit their ceiling this past year with Cam Ward. Florida State and Miami are also both stuck in the ACC. Look, one of the biggest reasons Urban Meyer had his 2 titles in 3 years at Florida, we don't talk about this. Urban Meyer took over Florida when Miami and Florida State were falling apart, remember? In the late 2000s. And he was able to get a lock. That's the difference between Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier. Spurrier was at Florida. John Adams corrected me on this in the past. When Spurrier was at Florida, that's when Florida State and Miami were at their peak. So he was really having to compete a lot more. Billy Napier is about to be in the Urban Meyer situation. And I think Grant Wise is going to see that and go to Florida. I just think that the Florida kids that want to stay in Florida are all going to pick Florida, including those South Beach kids, Dave. They're not going to Miami.
I think you're a little too optimistic about them. We shall see. By the way, an update where Tennessee stands in the 2026 class. Right now, 5th overall. They do have 1 5-star prospect, 3 4-star prospects committed to the 2026 class. You know the 5-star, Faison Brandon out of Greensboro, North Carolina, Grimsley High School. Then they have Tyreek King, a 3-star prospect, Brandon Anderson, a 3-star prospect, Carson Sneed, a 3-star prospect, Gabriel Ascenda, who will join us on Off the Hook Sports this afternoon, a 3-star prospect, Tyron Evans, a 3-star prospect, Tyson Bacon, a 3-star prospect, and Braylon Outlaw, a 3-star prospect. So I'm a little confused. It says on Tennessee's listing in their ranking that they have 3 4-star prospects committed, but all the ones I see are either a 5-star in Brandon or 3-star. So I'm not exactly sure where the rankings are. Is it?
247 Sports vacillates between their specific rankings and the composite rankings. So it really depends on which way you're looking when that happens, because it does get a little confusing. If you go by composite for 2026, they have 1 5-star, 3 4-stars, 4 3-stars, pretty much, which puts them at number 5. Oregon's leading the way in recruiting right now, and Texas A&M is number 2, and Penn State's number 3, and USC is number 4. It's so early in 2026, though, Dave, that you and I both know this. Like, this is not what the final recruiting rankings are going to look like. And I love when people make a big deal. How many fan bases have you seen in the past go, oh, we got a top 5 class, and it's March, and the recruiting rankings aren't even until next year? And, you've seen that, right?
I don't know whether to legislate against that voice. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. And bank on it, Tennessee right now at number 5 in the recruiting rankings for the 2026 class. Bank on it, Caleb, that Tennessee will finish in the top 5, the top 10, or top 15. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
Top 5, top 10, top 15. Bank on it. Caleb, I'll make a poll question out of that. The last poll question, have the changes in college football affected your fandom? A little 25%, a lot 50%, not at all 25%, but nobody said I'm out. Caleb, Tennessee will finish top 5, top 10, top 15 in the 2026 class that essentially will wrap up the first week in December.
Man, I hate being lame. And when I say that, you know me, Dave, I love to go big. I love to go bold. When I bet, I'm not just going to bet on the spread. I'm going to parlay that thing with like 7 other legs and go big to win. I didn't want to hear Nico Iamaleava has potential last year. I wanted to hear I'm picking him to win the Heisman, and I did. So I would love to say top 5 or unranked or a terrible class in general. I'd love to go bold, but I'm splitting the baby. It's going to be a top 10 class. It's going to be a top 10 class in the end. Probably like 9 or 10. And by the way, that's okay given the state of college football and recruiting today. If you focus on maintaining and building around your high school guys with top 10 classes, amidst the era of NIL and the transfer portal, you'll have enough talent, plus you'll have a level of chemistry that can help you win titles.
Here's why I disagree with you. I think that Tennessee will be top 5 where they're sitting right now because I look at the programs that they're behind. Oregon, Texas A&M, Penn State, Southern California. They're 1, 2, 3, 4 collectively, respectively, I should say, in front of Tennessee. I look at schools like Georgia and Alabama as Tennessee's primary competition for prospects. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Where they
I think Georgia's on Georgia. I think Georgia and Alabama over the past 10, 15 years that's not been their primary competition. Their primary competition, unfortunately, has been South Carolina.
Well, who you need to be your primary competition. Better way of phrasing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're not going to beat South Carolina for prospects and then beat Alabama and Georgia on the football field.
Right. You will not.
All right. So Georgia is behind Tennessee. And here's something I was told by someone with really strong ties to Georgia in the recruiting circles. They are going with the Nick Saban model of Kirby Smart gets a little bit of a discount because he will get you ready for the NFL. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think it would work under Saban if he somehow came back or never left Alabama. And I don't think it's going to work at Georgia. Caleb, the other side of that is Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban. So I think Tennessee will win some prospects for them. Now, for those that are curious, it's early. Don't get me wrong. Georgia is 14th in the nation in the 2026 class. Alabama, let's just put it this way. I'm still scrolling. They're barely top 50 because they only have 1 commitment. So that'll change. I'm not trying to indict them on the recruiting that they've had to this point. But Caleb, I think Tennessee now, given what I told you with Georgia and given the fact that there's no Nick Saban in Alabama, I think they win 2 or 3 of those recruiting battles for elite prospects against those 2 schools.
I think they win some battles, but Dave, you're falling into the trap I just talked about. You can never judge recruiting rankings. And one, it's not even National Signing Day for 2025's class yet. And we're judging recruiting rankings for the 2026 class. This is going to change dramatically. Here's recruiting advice I give when you look at rankings. I don't think you should even look at rankings, Dave, until the end of June. That's the first time you can get a gauge of where schools will end up, where schools will land. I think if you have a top 5 class in the end of June, you're competing to have a top 5 class at the end of the year. But I literally think judging recruiting rankings right now is like judging who leads your division in baseball after April. And as you know, that's something not worth judging. So I just think it's way too early. Alabama's not going to end up at 48th, guys. They're going to be in the top 10. Georgia's going to be in the top 10. I disagree with you. I think the Kirby Smart discount's going to work. Now, okay, let me take this back. I'm not so sure it's going to work. I think the discount for certain coaches is possible, though. You saw receivers take a Heupel discount last year, and you've seen, just for the record, I think if Nick Saban were around, he would get a discount. If you get developed for the NFL, you talked about it, Dave, and I talked last year at SEC Media Days, not last year, but the year before, to a couple of people that have talked to prospects. there are 5-star prospects right now that have been consistently saying, yeah, this school's offering me $100K more, but this school's put 7 players at my position in the NFL over the past 3 years, and 4 of them have been first-round picks. And these high school kids aren't stupid. They're not going to do you say, Davis, which is tripping over nickels in search of dollars. They're not doing that. And they got smart people around them saying the dollars of the NFL are more valuable than the cents of the NIL. And
I got to be honest with you. We're on. I disagree. I think guys are taking 10, 20% more money when they shouldn't, as opposed to going to the right school. I really do.
Well, one, we're speaking in absolutes. Some are, but some aren't. Some aren't. Some are willing to take a discount for the NFL. I'm telling you, Dave, quarterbacks will, for instance, take a look after this year. You don't think receivers are going to take a Ohio State discount after what Ryan Day just did with Jeremiah Smith, or not Ryan Day? I'm not giving him credit, but Chip Kelly.
I don't think they will. Dylan says top 10, in my opinion. Again, we're talking absolutes. We just don't have the funds to catch up to the Oregons or OSUs of the world yet. So that's where Dylan weighs in. Now, Travis says, okay, so if we're in the top 5 in recruiting, will 25 be the hot seat for Heupel if we lose 3 games? So I think you're saying 26. I say, oh, hell yes. Listen, if Josh Heupel doesn't win 3 games or loses 3 games or 4 games this upcoming season, as some people are predicting, I think 2026 is, I don't know if it's a hot seat year, but it'll go a long ways in determining whether or not I think he can get Tennessee back to an elite level.
Well, and if he loses 3 or 4 games, there's not a chance in hell he's got a top 5 recruiting class next year. There will be decommits out the wazoo. You guys remember Butch Jones going into 2017? He still had a top 5 class, funny enough, for 2018. And then things went south. And, I mean, it was just a wave of decommits and a larger wave of decommits. And he didn't even have 5-star hearts at the end, Dave.
No, he didn't. All right, breaking news that or is that breaking news? I know that you referenced it in the message board. I'm having trouble finding confirmation on this. Brandon Anderson, did he decommit? Do we have news on that?
Did Brandon Anderson decommit?
If you can help me with that on the message board.
I
think if that happened and we're running that down, but that Sam Pendleton had a hand in that, I would think so.
Yes. He has officially decommitted. He decommitted today, January 27th. The offensive tackle Brandon Anderson out of North Cobb in Georgia, but they're still in the running,
right?
Sorry.
Sounds clearly like a Pendleton thing, right? Especially the fact that Pendleton had 3 years, Tennessee's newest commitment of the offensive guard, and Mo coming in. You're starting behind 2 guys with more college experience.
Yeah, but that's not why, because this is a 2026 class and he's a tackle, not a guard. So I mean, I don't know why he decommitted. There's a lot going on in this. Rivals is reporting this right now, but we're going to have to look more into this later in the week because I'm not so sure exactly why he decommitted. Well, no, you are right. He is an interior offensive lineman, but he's for 2026. So I can't see why the Pendleton move would make him do that unless he expected to start immediately. But yes, he has.
I'm going to be honest with you, and I don't share my evaluations a lot because I think there are people better equipped. I don't think this is a huge loss. He's a 4-star on 24/7's composite ranking. He's a 3-star according to 24/7. 6'4", 320 pounds. I watched his tape when he committed. I was not overly impressed. I feel like this is one of those guys you take just in case you don't fill up another spot. So I can't tell you, but this feels like he may have showed up on campus and they said you needed to develop physically and you did not. So we're not sure this is a place for you.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, the schools he's looking at beyond Tennessee were Missouri and Georgia Tech now was in the running. And I mean, when you talk about those, you're like, okay, yes, Alabama was in the running. Alabama's in the running too. So Tennessee, Missouri, Georgia Tech, and Alabama. And it's like, okay, if Missouri and Georgia Tech are that high, you kind of question how valuable he is. He's a 3-star on 247. I know he's a 4-star on 247 composite, but it's debatable if he's a 3 or 4-star. And again, guys, it's early in the process. We're talking January, 2 weeks before National Signing Day for the 2025 class. So this is just too early of it. It's way too early to break things down.
This is a classic offer early and see how the class shakes out. Especially since the guy's from Georgia. Go ahead and see if you can throw a tentacle out to Georgia, and maybe he's got a teammate, maybe he's got friends, he bring other guys in. But if he shows up on campus and he's not in great shape, then move on. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Recruiting hardcore business as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't forget, if you join the channel on the YouTube, we're killing the Patreon thing, you automatically get a Hound Dogs gift certificate, so you'll pay for it in month 1. We'll give away great prizes like a Celebrate 98 book, Hooker t-shirt, not that kind of Hooker t-shirt, degenerates. We'll give that away weekly, and this upcoming Friday, we'll give away the John Henderson mini autographed helmet. We're cooking. Off the Hook Sports. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios at 10 a.m., East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, Off the Hook Sports.